good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining for this webinar. My name is Chandra Gundlapalli. I am working as a VP of Enterprise Architecture at Winwire Technologies. Winwire Technologies is a specialized IT solutions company focused on making information actionable for enterprise. And as a Microsoft managed partner, our global business has been built over the years by helping enterprise customers realize their business goals by leveraging platforms such as Sharepoint, SQL Server, Office 365, Azure, and .NET programming frameworks. I would encourage everyone to be to share their comments, questions, clarifications, and to be a very interactive session throughout this webinar. And Rajiv will be walking us through all the presentation and materials, and please share your questions and clarifications, and we will discuss in detail. Rajiv, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chandra. So I think Chandra has already talked about who we are. We also look at Windows Azure, SharePoint, Office 365, SQL Azure, SQL Server 2012, Microsoft .NET, HTML5, Yammer, and K2. Moving on to the agenda, I think one of the key decisions of any decision maker will be to choose the right environment for the SharePoint-driven enterprise applications. So the key question that anybody would ask is, how do I choose, or what do I choose? So the session will try to cover the following agenda, which is an introduction to the SharePoint 2013 on-premise, introduction to SharePoint 2013 online for Office 365. You'll also have an introduction to the hybrid version. Then we will move on to look at the comparison parameters, which will help us compare between SharePoint on-premise, online, and hybrid. Then finally, we will look at an approach which will help us choose between on-premise, online, and hybrid.
Thank you, Rajiv, for setting the stage. And I think overall, the outcome of the webinar should be looking at what are the different parameters, different things to consider when selecting either an on-premise version or an Office 365 version, and also on top of it, the hybrid version. For example, some of the companies might have invested very heavily on their existing on-premise version, and at the same time, if they are looking at using both the on-premise and also the Office 365 version, how and what are the best practices to use the hybrid version is also going to help take decisions. And on top of it, I think most of you might be aware that Microsoft is investing very heavily, and they have done significant improvements in SharePoint 2013 platform in all the aspects of either it's an on-premise or Office 365 version, or some of the enhancements done to the hybrid environment. We will go into each of the detail, and at the end of the webinar, you will be able to understand and better appreciate different options and different scenarios. Rajiv, please continue.
Thank you. So let's start with the introduction to the SharePoint 2010 on-premise. In this case, the SharePoint farm is within the corporate network. So as you see on the right side, you will see a diagram, a sample diagram wherein it represents the SharePoint farm within the corporate network, wherein you will typically see the web front-end servers, application servers, the search servers, and the SQL database. This kind of a configuration, it depends a lot on various requirements that needs to be met, like availability or disaster recovery. IT support team maintains the SharePoint farm and applies the Microsoft patches regularly. The authentication is primarily based on the on-premise AD. You can also look out for availability requirements from anywhere from 99.9 to 99.999%, which maps to around 8 hours of downtime to around 5 minutes of downtime per year. Then you also can look out for full support for the server-side customizations. A good example for a server-side customization would be, to have a site definition which can create a predefined structure along with the various aspects like applying the master pages or the security groups and all. You can also look for various enterprise level features such as BCS, which is called as Business Data Connectivity Services, a good way to access your backend applications or enterprise applications. You can also look out for the fast search server, which is an advanced search application. You can also look out for the performance point service, which will primarily help you to bring out the BI solution space.
Okay, thank you, Raju. As Raju mentioned, I think as the name indicates, the IT teams, development teams will have full control on the SharePoint on-premise version in terms of using the powerful features built into the platform, and also having access to the environment to make any changes or to add any of the web servers if needed based on the capacity planning. So the IT team, internal teams, and also admins will have a lot of control or basically full control over the SharePoint form. That will be the big differentiator on the on-premise version. Raju, please continue.
Thank you, Chandra. So the next is introduction to the SharePoint 2013 online for Office 365. In this, the SharePoint site is within the Microsoft Data Center. As you see, the diagram depicts a typical Microsoft Data Center, which will represent an Office 365 tenant, which can host the SharePoint Online, Link Online, Exchange Online, and also the Azure AD. So you can probably have the SharePoint Online consisting of single sites or multiple sites across. You can also have a good amount of features enabled. In this, the Microsoft applies the patch regularly. These are updates that can help fix any of the bugs that are there in the product. You also get an built-in availability of around 99.9%, which maps to around 8 hours of downtime per year. You get global data centers, which will reduce latency and increase your network bandwidth. You'll also get an built-in disaster recovery because of the global data centers. Then you have support for 5 compliance standards, primarily, looking at security-related Act standards, which can look at securing the content, even securing data which is stored in the system. You have ISO 27001 security, then Federal Information Security Act, FISMA, the FERPA, which is specifically Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, usually protects the data of the students. Finally, you have support for the client-side object model and the app model. The client-side object model basically helps you to create very good user experience UI-driven applications, basically bringing in a host of the SharePoint APIs, client APIs, plus the JavaScript in it. You can also create .NET-based applications using the client-side object model. Then you also have, with 2013 coming in, the app model, wherein you can create custom apps, and you can also use apps from your corporate company app catalog or the SharePoint App Store.
Okay. I think on top of whatever Raju mentioned, here some of the things, key things to look at is basically the control to the server is limited. Just for example, the remote desktop access to the server, where if an admin or IT team wants to see or deploy any of the features or functionality or add any of the servers to the form, that will be pretty much limited with this version. But at the same time, I think some of the areas where it will help is, for example, if your company is looking at quickly building sites for marketing some of your initiatives, this might be a good approach. As it doesn't depend on any of the existing servers, you will have your your initiative go-to-market or go-to-market time will be very little less, and also as I mentioned, Microsoft has done a lot of significant improvements. One of the key things to note is app model, application model, wherein it's more or less towards using an app store in iOS app or Android app or Windows Store. Users can go and directly, just within few clicks, can add an existing free apps or the company published apps. That way, even though your company moves to Office 365 version, the users will still be able to use the power of the applications already built in. So pretty much, except the direct access to the servers and having full control on the servers, other functionality is going to remain the same, and there will be some features which we are going to discuss in detail, which will be limited also in the next slides. Microsoft will take care of patching or updates automatically. So IT team or admin team really doesn't need to worry about planning for upgrades or downtime most of the time. Raju, please continue.
Thank you. We'll also look at the introduction to the SharePoint hybrid version. So you see out here the SharePoint sites are deployed both on the SharePoint on-premise and the SharePoint online version. An example is through the, we can see the diagram wherein the SharePoint site is also once deployed in the corporate network, which is also the customer network, and you also have the SharePoint site deployed on the SharePoint online space. So the best thing is that the ADs, the Active Directories, can be synchronized between the on-premise and the online version, and you can also bring in a single sign-on, so it improves the user experience when they connect to the online sites from the corporate network. The decision to host a SharePoint site on an SharePoint on-premise or online depends on various factors based on like security, which could be because of a legal requirement or because of the features that are needed to be applied in that application. Authentication, as I said before, can be with the on-premise AD, which could be an online AD, or could be a single sign-on through too. You can also get the rest of the features considering having both on-premise and online version. It's a good option when you want to have workloads involving the global deployments, which can address scenarios wherein you have the country's laws prohibiting data to go across different countries or regions.
Okay, thank you, Raju. As Raju mentioned, I think some of the things to consider is if your company is investing, already invested in the on-premise version, either it could be a SharePoint Search configuration, or it could be a existing Active Directory or a user profile service, and if you are planning to implement a workload in Office 365 because of its advantages, but at the same time, if you are looking at reusing the existing functionality in terms of either, for example, if you want to show the search results from your on-premise version on top of the Office 365 version, this is where the hybrid topology or hybrid configuration is going to come into picture, whereas you can build both the results from both online and also from your on-premise versions. That is just one example. Similarly, there could be some other examples of pulling the user profile information from your on-premise version to the Office 365 version also. So this is where, again, just stressing on the point that if your company is planning to reuse the existing investment, this will be a good option, but at the same time, they can move to the Office 365, implementing the new workloads, which will be separate from already existing on-premise version. Please go ahead, Rajiv.
Hi folks, I think we are not able to hear Raju. Just give us a couple of minutes so that I reach out to Raju. What's the issue? Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Sorry, I think I've just gone on mute.
Yeah, Raju, sorry we were not able to hear. You'll have to go back to a couple of slides.
Right. I guess this slide was probably when I was about to start. Okay. So I think the slide that we were looking out for was to identify to compare between the different options that we have got, so Sharepoint 2013 on-premise or online or a hybrid version. What we've done is we've we identified the key comparison parameters, which looks at the cost involved, the infrastructure deployment and maintenance, business continuity, product feature, customization options, information security, compliance standards, storage needs, and size of the organization. So I think what we will do now is we will go through a high-level description of each of the comparison parameters. The first one is the cost involved, which basically brings out the cost associated with the servers, for purchasing of or maintaining of servers, purchasing of the storage devices, the licenses, and the maintenance of any of the above. Then you can look out for the infrastructure deployment and maintenance, which relates to the step of deploying the farm, maintaining it by applying the patches and updates, also monitoring its health. In terms of business continuity, this refers to the plans that you need to ensure that the business is not interrupted, so you'll have to plan for high availability disaster recovery. Moving on to the next slide, for comparison parameters, you look out for the product features. You would look out for features that are needed to meet your requirements. These features could relate right from the Sharepoint standard features to your enterprise level features. Then you have the customization option parameter, wherein when a requirement is not met using the out-of-the-box feature, you might want to build a custom solutions. So you might want to look out for a server-side component or a client-side component or an app model. The next one is the information security, which needs this needs to be secure, the information. This needs to be achieved probably by placing the content with the corporate network because of legal obligations, or even by ensuring by following some specific security standards like the ISO 27001 Act. Then we will look at the comparison parameter, the third slide, wherein we'll first look at the compliance standards. This will refers to a set of industry standards which needs to be in place for any Sharepoint application. You might need to design some of the standards, which could be like ISO 27001 or FISMA or FERPA. Then you also would need to look at the last parameter being being around for storage needs, which basically talks about the storage that needs to be in place for the needed initial needed said storage amount, or based upon the growth of the content. Last parameter is for the size of the organization, broadly categorizing as small, medium, or large. So we'll start on trying to compare the different environments, that is the on-premise, online, and hybrid, and compare each parameter across these three. First, looking at the cost involved. So if you look at the on-premise version, you will have the cost related to purchasing or maintaining of the hardware, or you could look out for the software licenses. Hardware could be associated to your servers or your storage devices. For the online version, you will have for purchasing of the Office 365 plans and user licenses. In this case, you only pay as you use. So if you have taken, say, an E1 plan, that is an enterprise plan from Office 365, taken 10 user licenses, the cost will ideally correlate to the cost of the E4 plan plus the 10 user licenses. So tomorrow, if you increase, in future increase the number of users, say, to 10, then the cost will change from E4 plan plus 20 users. And in terms of the hybrid, cost will both be from the on-premise version and also from the online version. Next one, talking about the infrastructure deployment maintenance. In this case, you will have, and on the on-premise version, the IT support team is deploying and managing the farm. You have the latest updates not really going through because of the policies from IT team. So possibility is that a couple of the fixes that come in through the updates or patches may not go into the production. In the online space, the Microsoft team is managing the Office 365. So the Sharepoint Online is in line with the latest updates and patches. In terms of the hybrid, both the corporate team and the Microsoft team is involved. The next one is the business continuity. In this case, on the on-premise version, the business continuity plan needs to be designed for parameters like high availability or disaster recovery. In the online space, the business continuity plan is already built in. So for the hybrid version, the on-premise sites and Office 365 sites follow their respective plans.
And also on top of it, just a very quick view on the cost involved parameter. Even though if you're selecting on-premise version, I think most of you are aware that there are several flavors, that is Foundation, Standard, and Enterprise version. There are different versions that one can actually look into and purchase based on the needs. The Enterprise version includes all the powerful features in terms of performance point services that is used for business analytics, and Visio services for viewing the business process or the workflow visually or pictorially. So those are the areas I think one has to really look into when regarding the cost, even though you are selecting a particular version. That is also valid for online version, Office 365 version, where Microsoft provides different options, different plans, starting from small business or mid-sized companies to bigger enterprises. So that is one of the key things also you will look into regarding the cost involved parameter. Raju, please continue.
Thank you. So moving on to the product feature. In this case, support for enterprise-level features like business data connectivity services, or the performance point for BI solutions or the fast search server. You get the full support to it. The Office web app needs to be installed. On online space, some of these enterprise-level features either are missing or limited. What is missing is the performance point service application. What's limited is with respect to the fast search capability plus the BCS capability. In terms of pre-configured features, you would get the Office web app already installed and configured. You also get the external share option also configured. The hybrid version, you would get choose features from both the on-premise and the online deployments. As far as the customization, you would get to choose the full support for server-side and the client-side code. The server-side code would have access to the server resources. So if you have planned for any kind of customizations which would need server-side access, you could develop that out. Example, say if you had a custom PDF converter which would need access to the Word automation service, you could actually develop that on the on-premise version. The client server-side code also is pretty much in line with using the JavaScript or the .NET code. You could also look out for using the app model and use the app using the organization's app catalog or to the Sharepoint App Store. In terms of online, there is full support for the client-side scripts, limited support on the server side, and you can also use the apps from the organization apps catalog or the Sharepoint App Store. Customization options will depend upon where the site is deployed. It's on on-premise or an online deployment. The next one is about the information security. This is basically trying to make the information more secure. So you would want to keep it within the corporate network, wherein IT team will have full control on the from the source. You could also be looking out for applying various security standards. So you would need to design that as a part of the overall solution build. On the online space, though, the information is stored in the Microsoft Data Center, which already meets many of the industry-specific security standards. If you look at the hybrid version, the on-premise is a good option when you want to have a sensitive information to be stored. The online could be that you would want to store and build on need basis.
And also on top of what Raju mentioned, one of the key things to look at regarding the customization options is in the latest version of the SharePoint environment or the platform, there are a lot of options for customization in terms of application development. I think some of you might have heard about cloud app model, which is nothing but an application which runs completely outside of the SharePoint platform or the SharePoint server, and still it can talk to the SharePoint platform in terms of REST protocols. That takes out the dependency, that gives developers a lot of options for developing applications within their own skill set. For example, let's say your company and the team members are experts in implementing ASP.NET MVC application using latest technology in terms of Twitter Bootstrap and responsive design and MVC4. On top of it, and you can still implement the applications targeted for SharePoint platform, and you can host them, and internally the API, Microsoft provides the API to call and get the needed information as per the requirement. So that is something you can look into when implementing applications for either it could be an on-premise version or it could be an online version. There are both options and a lot of options available, and you are not restricted regarding app development into the platform. That is something I wanted to stress. That is especially one of the key features that Microsoft released in the latest SharePoint 2013 platform. And another thing about the information security is Microsoft clearly understands the aspects of standards in the industry in terms of HIPAA or SOX compliance or European Union standards or compliance areas. And I believe that is the Microsoft Azure, our cloud platform, is the only platform which has got a lot of certifications in terms of compliancy. So that is also one of the other points I wanted to explain or stress upon. Raju, please continue.
Thank you, Chandra. So the next one is looking at the compliance standards. Any of the industry standards that need to be put in place for the on-premise version needs to be designed and implemented. The corporate team, IT team, has to get the audits completed. On the online version, the verification of the standards are already being done with third-party auditors. And the online version already meets the 5 different compliance standards. Chandra did mention about those. like the EU model clauses, or HIPAA, or FISMA. FISMA is the Federal Information Security Management Act. In terms of hybrid version, the on-premise and the Office 365 sites follow their respective compliance standards. In terms of storage needs, the on-premise version would need we would need to have storage devices which would have to consider performance as a key parameter. So you do have also a disaster recovery. So the devices that you would bring in would be expensive. You would also look out for the site collections, on SharePoint, which will store more than 100 GB. You would need a scalable storage size, because considering the fact that the data will keep growing as the business grows. In the online space, though, you get the storage pretty much cheap. The site collection can store up to 100 GB only, and the maximum content that you can store in single tenant will be dependent upon the Office 365 plan. And the hybrid version, the on-premise and the Office 365 site follows their respective storage solutions. In terms of size of the organization, the on-premise is suitable for medium and large organizations. The online, ideally good for small, but again depends on the need and the requirement. The hybrid is very much suitable for large organizations, wherein you would have the resources or the employees spread across the world. So you would need to have a global data center too. So I think we are moving on to the last sets of slides. I think this is a key one wherein we have thought about an approach which can help us in choosing the right environment based upon what we have, all the list of parameters that we have discussed about or talked about. So what we have done is we've identified two aspects for each parameter to assign a score to it and then to assign a priority to it. The score will really map between 1 and 5 and is depending upon its positive impact. A score of 1 means that it provides a least positive impact, while a score of 5 provides the highest positive impact. Now, to make you understand about the comparison between a least positive impact or a high positive impact, let's go through some of the examples here. Take an example of cost involved. In case of the SharePoint online version, the overall cost is usually cheaper or lesser than compared to the on-premise version. On-premise, why is it high? Because of considerations for maintaining the servers, or purchasing the servers, or purchasing the licenses. So looking at that, the outcome is that because the online version is cheaper, you would see a positive impact coming in there. So the score of an online version is greater than the score of an on-premise version. Next one is compliance standards. The SharePoint Online provides a built-in support for 5 standards, unlike in the on-premise version. So again, here the online gives more support for compliance standards. So you would see a positive impact coming in, and that's the reason why the score for an online will be greater than the on-premise version. Next one is the product feature. In this case, the SharePoint on-premise provides a complete set of enterprise-level features in comparison to online, wherein either you have the feature missing or it's limited. So the score for an on-premise will be greater than the score for an online version. So the next thing you will do is try to prioritize these parameters between something between 1 and 3. 1 would mean it's a high priority parameter, 2 would mean medium, and 3 would mean a low priority parameter. If we want to ignore any of the parameters, you can as well choose to put a 0 value to it. What we have done is looking at the aspect of score and the priority, we brought in a sample worksheet wherein we have taken all the parameters and looked across all the 3 spaces, that is 3 environments, between on-premise, online, and hybrid. Looking at without the priority itself, you can see the online's score is somewhere between the score of on-premise and the hybrid. If I take an example, say for the cost involved, I think just to tell why the score of cost involved is on low for the on-premise, online you'll see it high and hybrid is low. The cost involved is because we saw in the earlier example that the positive impact is least there, but that's the reason why the same case applies to the hybrid version. We've given a score of 1 for the on-premise and score of 1 for the hybrid version. Look at online, it's got 3 because the cost is much lesser. And look at example for product feature. The product feature, in that case, you would get a host of features from the on-premise. You would see that to be higher. Online, because the features are less, so you would see lesser score for it. Hybrid, because you've got an option to choose between the on-premise and online version, you get an average score of around 4. Okay. Once you have looked at the final scores, what we have done is we've brought in a kind of a process, a sequence wherein you would look at for putting in the priorities for each parameter, then getting its total score for each parameter, and getting the final score for each parameter. Higher of the 3 final scores that you get, this helps you choose the right environment. So in this case, for on-premise is one option when its score is high. If the score is high for online, you would see the online coming in. If it's a hybrid, you will choose hybrid. So I think we come to the last slide of putting the question and answer session.
Hey, thanks Rajiv, thanks Chandra for the insight, for the very useful insights on how to choose SharePoint 2013 on-premise versus Office 365. Let's see a few questions that is coming out from the audiences. The first question is, can you have a hybrid implementation with Office 2010 on-premise and online 2013?
So if I repeat the question, can we have a hybrid environment with SharePoint 2010 online and 2013 on the Office 365, right? I just want to make sure the question I understand is correct, right?
That's right.
Yes, you will be able to clearly, for example, the scenario, I will take an example scenario. For example, let's say you have some of the search configuration which is done in on-premise using SharePoint 2010 environment, and at the same time you have Office 365 environment with SharePoint 2013. Then you will be able to combine both the search results and have the hybrid environment. That is one use case, and the second use case is going to be if you want to combine the Active Directory or reuse the existing Active Directory users from on-premise, you will be able to use something similar to a proxy server, which will basically help in bridging the gap between the on-premise Active Directory users to your Office 365 version also. Yes, you will be able to use the hybrid version in that scenario.
Thanks, Chandra. Thanks for that. So, other question is, can you list out features not supported by Office 365?
Sure. And that is a very good question, and this is going to be a key point. And when you are looking at implementing or taking a decision, if your company is looking at a short-term goals and the long-term goals, you need to really look into the long-term goals when you are taking a decision. That is, you need to help your team members, ask them some questions of, is the company going to look for some kind of a analytics in terms of data analytics, and if it is related to the performance point services, then you will be limited in Office 365 in implementing performance point services. That is pretty much used for data analytics and BI, business intelligence features. But at the same time, you will be able to use some kind of a hybrid environment, wherein in Office 365 you just display some kind of a static chart or something, and when users click on that, users will be redirected to the on-premise version, whereas the same example of using the business analytics in terms of performance point services can be used. So those are the areas, and also there are other features that Office 365 version will not be able to support. That is business data connectivity services, and it will be a record center. You will not be able to configure in Office 365, and also locally installing the custom software on the Office 365 version will be very much limited. So these are the areas it will be limited, and one of the other key areas is also advanced public-facing websites. Although Microsoft provides some kind of a template or wizard for generating a public-facing website in Office 365, there are so many limitations on implementing that public-facing website using Office 365. So those are the areas you will look into typically regarding the features not supported by Office 365.
Thanks, Chandra. Thanks for that. And there is another question from one of the audience who says, what a hybrid solution look like to the end user? And if he's asking, like, if you can explain that in a little bit detail, that will be helpful.
Sure. Very, very good question. Thank you. Thank you that you asked. And for example, one of the key consideration when you are implementing a hybrid solution is, are you targeting to differentiate the implementation of hybrid to the end users or to your own users, different department people, or are you looking at providing a seamless experience for the end users? You will be able to implement both the scenarios. For example, if you take a requirement of, let's say, there is a new workload for you to create a site for a department or IT department or a legal department, you can brand them in such a way that it follows the similar branding guidelines which are in the on-premise version, or you can pretty much differentiate it to let the end users know that since this is a different workload or work stream, you can also pretty much differentiate with the with the different branding scenario. That is related to the branding, but there are several other scenarios that you need to consider, take into account. For example, if your company is implementing or providing the self-service My Sites functionality, then there are certain parameters that you can enable in Office 365. Using that, you can redirect the users from Office 365 to on-premise version if they click on My Profile or some of the functionality available in My Sites configuration. At the same time, you can implement the same scenario in on-premise version also, redirecting the users to the Office 365 version. So these are options provided which will make end users to have a seamless experience. Hopefully that answered your question, but we'll be glad to provide more information on what are the other areas you will look into to make it as a seamless experience for the end users also.
Thanks, Chandra. So we have one other last question here. So what are the scenarios need to be considered if one existing application is in current on-premise SharePoint to be migrated to Office 365?
Okay, very good question again. It depends on, for example, let's say the application is implemented using a lot of a server-side API. If the application is not using any kind of a client-side object model, just to give a little idea for other audience, there are different application programming interfaces when it comes to implementing application. One is called server-side application programming language. The second one is called client-side object programming language. You will implement applications if you are planning to host the application in the same SharePoint server. For that, you will use the server-side application programming language. And if you are planning to host the application separate from the SharePoint server somewhere in the other server, then you will implement client-side object programming language. And in terms of trying to migrate from an existing application which is already in the on-premise version, one of the key things you will consider with the new application programming language, application app model that Microsoft is providing, my recommendation is re-evaluate how the application is working and follow the guidelines of using or taking the advantages of the new app model that Microsoft is providing. The new app model has a lot of flexibility in terms of using RESTful interfaces, in terms of using jQuery UI, and making it completely separate from your current SharePoint environment. That way, the application can behave on its own as an independent application, but at the same time, it can use the functionality and features from the SharePoint environment. So those are the areas I would recommend to look into when you are planning to migrate the existing application from 2010 on-premise to a Office 365 version.
One more addition you can look out for is because the 65 version in single-site collection can only contain 100 GB. So in case your on-premise site already had a content DB size of beyond 100 GB, you would probably need to relook at the information architecture so that you can probably plan to split it across multiple site collections, 65 space.
Okay, thanks Rajiv, thanks Chandra. There is another question from one of the audience, and here goes the question. How is migration from Office 365 SharePoint 2013 to Office 365 SharePoint 2013 happens? I think there is slight confusion on the question, if I understand it correctly.
So my understanding is the question is more or less how to migrate from
2010
on-premise SharePoint. Yeah, please go ahead.
It's from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013 in Office 365 environment.
Sure, and there are different suggestions, different recommendations. If your company has implemented a lot of content in terms of departmental sites and documentation and different information architecture, there are very good tools out there which can help in implementing or solving this challenge. You can also look into some of the tools available in freely in Codeplex, which can help you with the content migration, but there are industry leaders in terms of AvePoint migrators, Metalogix content migrators, which will save a lot of time, but you need to really evaluate buy versus build. Are there couple of sites that you are planning to migrate, or is the content database so huge that you will not be able to, with the built-in tools or with the free tools, you will not be successfully able to deliver? Then in that case, you will look into the already proven tools in terms of AvePoint, company that provides DocAve content migrators. And also there are other companies, Metalogix, which also provides content migration from your on-premise version to Office 365 version. It can also go up to a granular level of moving the metadata associated with any item level permissions also. Those are the areas you will look into. But on a very high level, if the content is less, please look at some of the free tools available on migrating the content. And if the content is really huge, you will look into buy versus build approach with the recommended tools I just mentioned.
Thanks, Chandra. Thanks, folks, for joining this webinar. In addition to this, if you have any questions, you can write to us at marketing@winwire.com, and we'll come back to you on that. Thank you. Thanks, Raju. Thanks, Chandra. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.